Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nicholas Johnson. I am the Chief Evangelist at Kahua. And on behalf of Kahua, the industry's only low-code, no-code platform as a service PMIS tool, I want to welcome you and thank you for being here today. Kahua is Project Management Information Systems. We're going to use that term, PMIS, over and over again. We've got data centers here in Canada. We're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, working over 60 countries in any language, any currency. And I know you've heard a lot about digital transformation. We're going to continue that conversation, but you've been in here for a little while. So on my time, I'm going to ask you all just to stand up for a second. Stand up. We're going to take a 1-minute exercise. Stretch your legs, stretch your arms just a bit, because you've been sitting there. Lean back if you can without falling over. And now introduce yourself to someone close by that you haven't met before. If you're at the Kitchener table, you're going to have to go to another table, okay? All right, thanks for stretching. Have a seat. Make a friend, have a seat. All right, friends, again, we're going to continue this conversation about digital transformation. And I will just tell you that our posture is that technology is an enabler. Okay, it's not the solution. So I want to start with just a little bit of data that comes from Dodge Data and Analytics. They recently published a report, and then I saw an industry expert speak on this at a panel at CMAA a couple weeks ago in San Diego. But Dodge did this report, and I'm happy to provide it for you. I'm not going to go into great detail, but the report says that if you refresh your tech stack, and it measured what the industry's doing, and it took the year 2019 and said, how many firms, how many organizations are using fresh technology? So new tools that they've acquired since 2019 versus before that. So in tech business, 3 years is a long time. So they said, who's using what's new and what's the effect on that? And again, without diving into this, I am very happy to provide all this data to you. It's a report that they published. I can provide you a link. You can see me at the table afterwards. But Dodge said that there are great financial benefits to using fresh technology. The comment that I heard was from Rose Hall, who is the CEO and president of AXA XL, construction industry technology leader. They're in the insurance and risk side. And she basically categorized how we as construction organizations are managing different pieces of tech. And you can see 3 lists there. Things that we are well adopted at, things that we are lagging at, and things that we are getting better at. Our conversation today is about digital transformation. The industry experts say that we're still lagging there a bit. So it's probably a good thing that several of the presenters today have talked about this. So we'll get started. I'm going to just ask my co-presenters here today, Arthur and Steve, to take just 1 minute and introduce yourselves, your company, and what's your role within the company. Arthur, we'll start with you.
Can you guys hear me?
Not on.
Check.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arthur Terechtchouk. I'm a founding partner of SuperSet Infrastructure. I run the advisory and transformation group. I guess I bring into my role and into the company about 15 plus, almost 20 years of technology transformation experience within the public sector with a special focus on capital infrastructure projects. I've worked on the public side with Metrolinx, Toronto Transit Commission, worked closely with Infrastructure Ontario. And for pretty much all my career have been very involved in what's been happening and how the market's been evolving.
Thank you, Arthur.
Hello. Hey, everyone. Steve Risi. I'm an Associate Director with KPMG. I am also the Canadian Kahua Alliance Partner for KPMG in all things PMIS and capital projects and infrastructure. My role at KPMG is primarily focused around helping our clients through these digital transformations, specifically with capital projects and PMIS solutions. I'm currently leading a PMIS implementation right here in Ontario at one of our large infrastructure clients, and am happy to share any insights and ideas that I have around our strategy to digital transformations.
All right, thanks, Steve. I'm going to start with a purpose here and ask you guys to help me with some definitions. We've heard a lot of conversations this morning. We've heard a lot of technical terms. So I want to be sure that we understand, that you understand what we're trying to present to you today. So Steve, I'm going to start with you and ask you to define two terms for me. And it's your definition. It's not right or wrong, but how do you define digital transformation? And how do you define digital twin?
All right, fantastic questions. I'll start with the digital transformations. I know you've heard a lot about this today, so I'll try to keep it brief and to the point to where we think we add value. First off, when we talk about digital transformations, the first key for me is digital is probably the least important part of the transformation. Digital transformations are really more people, process, and technology, with the technology being the third component. If you're not transforming from a people and process perspective, typically the technology portions, in my experience, is going to fail. So in that light, when we're talking about digital transformations, we're really talking about how we're transforming the entire business and organization to take advantage of a technology tool set that leverages, a combination of best practices and, the unique features of how your business operates. And the second part to that, I believe, was the
digital twin.
Digital twin. And again, I know you've heard about digital twin today as well. For me, digital twin is all about going from a reactive model to a proactive model. The tricky part with the definition around digital twins are it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And it really depends on your specific requirements and needs. So when we look at defining a digital twin, it really depends on what your organization is looking to achieve and the desired outcomes from the specific digital twin idea or methodology.
Excellent. Thank you. Arthur, we got a couple for you. Common data environment and platform.
Thank you, Nicholas. So let's talk a little bit about common data environment. And for those that did any business or had worked at Metrolinx or any of their capital projects, we worked extensively to build a common data environment for them. And what does that mean, first of all? It means all of the stakeholders and participating parties within a project all have access and leverage the same common data set to make all of their decisions. When you and your consultants and the contractors show up, you're showing up with exact same reports. We've canceled all of this Excel stuff, exact same, with the exact same logos and report numbers. And then if you take that conversation about where did you get this from, let's spend half a meeting reconciliating our reports, and you just focus on actually getting through the materials, identifying what's being delayed, what's being impacted, and how. That streamlines and pretty much almost revolutionizes the way in which you're going to work together and collaborate. So that's one aspect. And the aspect of a platform is, I guess over the last 20 years, we went from working on solutions that meant to operate in one specific manner. And so they gave you capabilities, but those capabilities were very limited because the software was developed to work one particular way, either for a particular segment of a market or for a particular contract type. When you're migrating into platforms, you essentially have a set of functionality and capabilities that you're now able to leverage. And then leveraging those, and that's business processes, that is maybe delegation of authority approvals, that's ability to control who sees what types of data and send things for approval and workflow. As soon as you're able to start implementing these features and functions of the platform to build your own operational processes or your own operational models or customize what's already there. Let's say you've picked up an accelerator and you fine-tuned it to meet your business's requirements. That's a whole different level of operation altogether. And so I think the industry as a whole, we're moving away from from solutions like we've had for the past 15, 20 years. And we're moving into the world of platforms where custom processes can be configured, business rules can be applied, and then all of that can be synced up with what are the contractual terms, what are the organizational, departmental, functional requirements. All of that gets layered on. And what is the means of you collaborating with your either suppliers or service providers if you are collaborating?
Thank you. Excellent. So I'm intentional about asking that question, and I'll point out you all have a platform in your hand. Mine's an Android platform. You probably have one of these, or you have one that's an iOS Apple platform, right? Everybody got one of these platforms in your hand? At Kahua, we use this term very technically, in that Google created a platform called Android, and they write apps on it. And they wrote the most important apps, which to them was the phone app and the camera app and the text app. And they created a platform that anybody can write other apps on. That's how Kahua's built our platform, and that's what it means to us. Actually, our name Kahua is the Hawaiian word for platform. So we've created a platform that anybody can write apps on. Why is this important? Because my friend and co-moderator Colm was here before in the last presentation. Colm defined digital transformation. It's not exactly what you said, Steve. And his panelist, Donna, said it's important how we use words, and we need to be careful with our language. That's what she said. And I took note of that. And the point of this is that there's not one right or wrong definition. I don't think Merriam-Webster's come full speed on these technical terms yet. It's important, though, that when I use these terms with you, when I talk to Dean about platform, it's important that he understands what I'm saying. And when he talks to me about digital transformation, it's important that I understand what he's saying. So the point of all this is that when you're in those conversations, be sure that both parties have an equal understanding of what those terms are. That make sense? All right. Let's move on. First question, Steve, I got a question for you. And this relates to how KPMG often promotes a concept of digital transformation to your clients that you should not begin with the requirements, but rather begin with the end in mind, as author Stephen Covey would say. So can you just tell us a little bit, what's the process like for envisioning the end state for your clients?
Yeah, and that's a great introduction to exactly what it is. We find that a lot of traditional path, or the path of easiest resistance, is starting with requirements, starting with what we need. But it's very easy to get off track if we don't throw it away and start at the beginning. In truly understanding where the organization and where your business wants to go with the digital transformation. This has been called many different things, like a North Star statement, a vision statement, but it's more than that. It's truly what we want to achieve with the digital transformation. And when you start with the end goal, you are able to work backwards and figure out what truly needs to happen within the transformation in order to be successful. So when we take that approach, it sounds backwards, but we're starting at the end. We figure out where we need to go and then the best way to get there. And there's no two transformations that are the same. I could do this at client A, then at client B, and it's going to look very different because the organizations are starting at different places. Their end objectives are typically different. Everyone wants to be a high-performing project organization that can execute on time, schedule, and cost, and do whatever else needs to happen in the course of delivering our large infrastructure projects. But there's nuances between clients, there's nuances between our approach. So by starting at the end and understanding where we need to go, we can come up with a unique approach that meets the specific kind of goals and what we're trying to achieve with the transformation to begin with.
Okay. Arthur, your firm, SuperSet, specializes in helping construction owners use technology to improve their project outcomes. What do you see as some of the foundational components that can help an organization get to the place that Steve just described? And are there any kind of must-haves that you have to have in place in order to really make this digital transformation happen?
Absolutely. So From the transformation perspective, there's maybe 3-4 things that are critical here. First and foremost, it's executive support and vision. This is kind of what Stephen just talked about. And what is it you'd like to be able to do that you're not able to do? And somebody high enough needs to want it bad enough for it to happen, because there's going to be requirements as you start working through that process. The second most important thing is, a lot of times when we engage with clients, there is a lot of homework that they should have done beforehand in terms of articulating their business processes, identifying what type of information they want to capture, then identifying the type of reporting, figuring out they've missed something on the information front, then figuring out the integration, then figure out that they've missed something on the reporting and on the data side. All of that is homework that I guess I would recommend for a client to do before or as a separate engagement in terms of getting ready to get the transformation done. The last component is organizational change management. Once that change is moving and once you're changing everything, you need the organization as a whole to understand this is where you are. These are the changes that are coming through the door. Your manager knows and their manager knows, and it's the executive vice president that wants it to happen, because there's going to be resistance, there's going to be gaps. You'll have to revisit things and clean things up. There is often union role and responsibility concerns always float up. So these 3 things, and having a very active and responsive mechanism in order to address these, just gets you ready. Similar to what Steve said, the technology isn't the most important part here. The technology may afford you efficiencies in terms of you don't have to send separate emails. The system is going to do that. You don't have to read that invoice. It's going to get scanned by the system. It's going to input it and get it in queue to get paid. But the overall organizational process around how all of that is going to happen and how every single person within the organization fulfills their role, that's the focus. What do you do in the system? What is the system going to do for you? What are you going to do on your own now? How does that modify the operation of the overall organization? The other thing I want to stress that I don't think we talk a lot about is efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency relates to how efficient is the process that you're administering? Are things sitting in queue for an X amount of time? How soon are you to get to it and respond to it? And that talks a little bit about how is the business process structured, and do you have adequate resources allocated to it to respond to it adequately? Effectiveness talks about the actual business, or considers the business process itself. Is it cumbersome? Does it not operate in the most effective manner? Or are there opportunities to streamline it and get it to operate more effectively, usually removing extra steps, removing people that might not need to be included in that process? And we see a lot of that with approvals. If anybody's working for an organization where 20 people need to sign a document in the red folder, or there is 20 emails, classic, but I guarantee you, anybody after the first 2 is just signing tentatively on everybody else's signature. Because by the time it gets to person number 6, if 6 said all right, I'll say fine. Right?
At number 6, there's already 5 other people to blame.
And to be honest, it's even worse if that person decides to go through the whole thing, the whole thing, make a comment, send it back, and restart the process. That's a disaster.
I saw a lot of smiles over here when you said the red folder with 20 signatures. So I think you made a good point there. All right, Steve, you described KPMG's philosophy for digital transformation. Can you describe, kind of what some of your guiding methods are for guiding organizations through this process? Are there, or maybe even an example, but tell us what the method is for that, the how-to.
Absolutely. So as Art was saying, it gives you the sense of the scope and size of digital transformation. It's not something that is singular in scope. It's not something that a single department can handle. It's not something that is taken in isolation. It really takes an army, for lack of a better word, to move a large organization through the process of a digital transformation. That means varying skill sets, varying types of people, from leadership, functional consultants, technical consultants, organizational change management folks, business folks, and it's a real integrated project team approach. So when we're taking this approach, it's number one, you have to assemble the right team. That team has to be something that takes into account the technology solution and platform, as well as the business stakeholders and departments. It needs to be a unified core approach to to drive the transformation forward, because problems are going to come up. It's never a straightforward process. It's never, this can be done in 3-4 months. Maybe it can, but I've never seen it. Typically, anyone who tries to do things on an accelerated timeline, it doesn't go very well for whatever reason. Surprise, surprise, everything takes a little bit longer than we expect. And part of that challenge is, again, something else Art mentioned, you just look at approvals. It's not an easy thing to change within an organization. We go very deep with our clients into, not just what they're doing, but why they're doing it. And working with them to facilitate and drive those organizational changes forward is a process. How do you get 20 approvers down to 3 approvers and get 17 people to agree that their signature is no longer needed? It's not an easy task. And this happens across the board in pretty much every facet of the processes we're going after here. And you can't get the efficiencies out of the platform unless you've optimized your processes to take advantage of the platform's capabilities. So it's all interrelated. It's all part of the process, and it's all something that takes experience, takes the right team, and it takes the organizational buy-in and commitment from the business itself.
So it sounds like you're doing change management really throughout the life cycle of your consulting project, that you're looking at a long-term transformation within that organization, not just bringing cool new technologies in.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned this earlier. The technology is not the Band-Aid solution that we all hope it is. I think it's clear that it's not. But unless you understand how to apply the technology, it's very likely you won't see the expected benefit realization and value that the organization is expecting.
Okay. Arthur, you said earlier that systems are important in this process, and that's really where Kahua lives. It's a project management information system. In your opinion, I'm just curious, are there kind of attributes that you think are more critical than others? When you're looking, you're helping a client decide what's important in a project management information system, a PMIS, what do you tell them is kind of some of the key attributes that are critical for their success there?
So it's kind of a loaded question, because what I might tell them might not be in line with what the rest of the market is going to tell them. So I'll speak from the consulting perspective.
And I should point out, you're a partner of Kahua, but you work with other organizations, and your job is to recommend what's best for your client, whether it's Kahua or something less wonderful than that.
Sure. So my recommendations aside, we'll speak about that after. Generally, where the market has been going. In the past 5 years, the new generation of project management professionals they've grown up with iPads, cell phones. They're obviously a lot more digitally supported and enabled. They're a lot more comfortable. A good example of that is if anybody's moved over from WhatsApp to any other platform I've moved, how hard was that? Or moving from messages to convincing your mom to use WhatsApp, and why, and explaining that. Now we're moving like this. If WhatsApp is compromised, we'll go to somewhere else. Not Signal, we'll go to Telegram. Not Telegram, we'll go to Signal. Back to text messages. Whatever you want. We're getting to that point in terms of refinement of our project management platforms. So the first part is usability. It has to be mobile. It has to integrate properly with how you'd anticipate to receive emails and how you'd anticipate to work on it, similar to how you work with any other application in your phone. The other aspect is what is being offered. So again, as the industry matures, there is now verticals, what we in the industry call accelerators. So if you continue thinking in this way of a platform, when you start thinking, well, you take a platform and let's say I specialize in oil and gas. And oil and gas is a very specific, or even infrastructure. They have very specific processes and tools that are unique to how they do business. Yes, they build stuff, but their reliance, let's say, on schedules is significantly higher than that of other industries. Oil and gas, nuclear, energy in general. When you look at something like residential, they'll live much more on the drawing. It's to those individuals, platforms work different, and you'd say, well, just go into your PMIS and look at it. A guy in the oil sector is going to think one thing. The guy in the commercial and residential, to him, the image is going to be different. And somebody in the infrastructure, like me, I'd imagine documents. That's all I'd see. Where somebody in commercial and residential would probably imagine drawings. So it's being mobile, being user-friendly and easy to navigate, and also delivering value with a much shorter implementation period. Because now, if somebody is in the capital infrastructure space and they're looking to procure a system, they're not procuring into a vacuum. They're procuring, like, what are the platforms, what are the solutions that are excelling in that particular vertical? And then just further refined into that. What are the contract types that they're doing? How closely is what's going to be presented and demonstrated going to match what I'm doing? And that seems to be the where everything is moving to.
All right, so I got a question for both of you. Steve, we'll start with you. You gave us KPMG's best practices for digital transformation. Do you have any worst practices that you would recommend we not adopt?
That's a tough one, but I think I can come up with a few. And just before I do that, to piggyback on what Art was previously saying, one other sometimes overlooked factor is flexibility. I think as the market matures, we're getting past the point of, there's limited options from a solution perspective. A lot of the solutions nowadays are mature enough where they can all do cost management. They can all do workflows. They all have various, aspects that, 5-10 years ago, or even less than that, were differentiators. So now it's more important than ever to find what the differentiators are for your organization and use those as a selection method and criteria going forward. And one of the ones I've been seeing lately in talking to some of my clients across the country is flexibility. They want a solution that aligns to how they're going to do business while, meeting their needs out of the box, which sounds contradictory because, they want something out of the box and they want something that's customizable for them, which it is. And then they understand that, but that's where the market's going. So finding something that has the combination of best practices plus the flexibility to meet those nuances is key. Now back to the question around, the best worst practices. We talked about organizational change management, deferring that change management to later in the project, or something to worry about post go live is a huge mistake. It happens for whatever reason. 2, starting too late in this process. So a lot of our clients, you have a major infrastructure project coming up in 1, 2, 3, 4 years. People tend to drag their feet on the technology selection or the information system solution kind of strategy at the beginning, which forces people into compromising on functional requirements for the sake of timeline or another external factor. And this is one of the things that we would recommend people avoid.
Arthur, same question for you. In your experience, any worst practices that we should all avoid?
Just to add, before I get into my part, just to add on to what Steve was saying, having spent so much time in the public sector, there seems to be this perception from the public side that as long as we hire somebody, everything is going to work out. I'm not sure if everybody's noticed how litigious the market has gotten in the past probably 2-3 years as COVID started. Contractors aren't letting things slide by anymore. If there's a delay, they have a well ironed out process and a quick dial to their lawyer who's going to send you over a notice of intent and start working on the statement of claim. And all of that is now supported very, very. The whole process is very streamlined, I guess I would say, through the Canadian system of going to court and suing people. So that's one of the other things. When these things aren't ironed out and you don't have predefined mechanisms of how you're going to deal with all of this stuff is absolutely going to happen. And it's probably not going to get swept under the rug or work itself out as cleanly as it might have before. And that's something I've heard. So some of the bad things not to do. Anytime any organization gets into a transformation, and you probably know they would elect Susan from administration, and Susan's been there for 30 years and she knows everything. Or she knows most things. There is a big problem with selecting Susan. If Susan's done administration or she's done document control, your whole system is going to revolve around document control functions, numbering, and controlling documents. Selection of an individual, I guess the term, Steve, would be a product manager from the owner's side. Like, that's the person that's going to be responsible to make sure that whatever the transformation is, whatever the final product is, it meets all of organizational requirements from different perspectives. So everybody's heard that expression that everything looks like nails to hammers. If you put a document controller there, whatever system you're designing, they'll design you a document management system, because from their perspective, that is how they're interacting with it. If you get a contract administrator or a finance person, they'll do a contract management system and they'll ignore the document control because for them, that's not important. So selection of any one of these individuals will probably pull the system and pull the requirements and the vetting of what goes in and out. We see that a lot. That is a very, very standard approach. The role that the product manager from the owner side plays is very, very critical. And it's not everybody that would take that on and have to work through all of the requirements organizationally and validate and get clarifications as we work through that process. That's probably one. Delaying organizational change management initiatives and not communicating, that's probably another one. We see that sometimes. And the last one is probably not taking advantage of what the actual solution can do. So if I tell you we don't need transmittals anymore, you go, how? We've always done transmittals. I go, that is a part of the business that's going to go away now. And we never come back to transmittals ever again. And this is how we're fulfilling the mandate of what transmittals used to do. It's difficult for people to jump over that hurdle and say, we've always been doing it, but I guess now we don't need it anymore. And we're never going to go back to doing it again. That's one. There's a lot of instances of that. Or another one would be, if somebody's done something every single day as part of their daily process, and what we're doing now is we're saying, we're going to do this exercise for a day or two in the beginning of the project, and you never have to come back and do this exercise again later. That is another modification. And a good example of that is, if anybody's familiar with building out submittal schedules, right? Not super exciting, but it's way better than getting submittals every day with transmittals on top and then having to parse everything out and get it to where it needs to go. That too is a change in terms of how people work and how they administer, what the impact of, I guess, their daily work and transformation and post-process is going to be.
All right, I'm going to thank you. They're great answers. I'm going to give you a few rapid fire. Then we'll take a couple of questions from the audience and still finish up in our allotted time. So rapid fire questions, gentlemen, 15 seconds or less to answer. Okay, so this is top of your head. Best of luck. If you could wave your magic wand and have one new piece of technology to assist your team in finishing on time and on budget, what would that cool new tool do? Steve.
A cloning machine. We need more people from the business, business experts from the business, so we can parallel path different activities and get things done faster.
Technology, process, and people. You just need more people. Arthur, what would your new tool do?
Write stuff for me. I write a lot of stuff. And if there was anything that wrote things, I think that would help a lot.
All right, Arthur, what are the most important integrations inside an organization? Software integrations.
Schedule, cost, and finance.
Okay, Steve?
Schedule, cost, and finance.
Very good, very good. We're on to something there. What asset data needs to be handed over to the owner when the project is complete? Steve?
Everything. That's the short answer. The more planning you do up front will save the operational headaches down the road. So everything you do from the construction perspective should at least have a lens, if not a well-designed connection with the operational phase of the asset.
Arthur, what needs to be handed over?
So I'm cheating because I just recently went through this process. You're going to want all the drawings, you're going to want insurance, and you're going to want any warranties. That's right off the bat. You're going to want all of that with the maintenance and operation teams.
That's a better answer.
All right, last rapid fire. What's the most interesting project you've ever been part of? Steve?
The one I'm doing at the moment. Every project is different. Everyone has unique challenges, and I learn something new from everyone. But it's always the most interesting because you get to solve the problem for the client and see the differences it can make.
Can you tell us anything about the project, or would you have to kill us all?
There's too many people to kill in this room.
Arthur, most interesting project you ever worked on?
So the most interesting is what stretches your capabilities the furthest. I guess I was leading a team that was implementing number of PMIS systems for Metrolinx, and essentially what ended up as a pilot that we did on East Rail Maintenance Facility, then with York Regional Rapid Transit, then we brought it back in-house. By the end, there was over like 1,500 people in it. And that snowballed very, very quickly, very aggressive schedule. But that was probably the most exciting because you're seeing 300 people start doing things differently, and you can start seeing all the data that they're putting into the system. And it's not about the data, how much easier everything is. And a big part of my other job was to explain to everybody that they don't have to do things the old way. So we spent about 70 hours, I think, in meetings, just going through and making everybody feel completely comfortable and supported with the change that was going to happen. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So we've got time probably for one or two questions, depending on how long your question is and how long their answer is. So any questions for Steve or for Arthur? Right here.
I'll be super quick. When you were talked about the some of the worst things that could be done, I don't think either of you mentioned about documentation, not having proper documentation or enterprise or organization-wide training. Those are the two things that I see most often that causes a transformation project to fail.
That's not a question. That's a comment. Do you want to comment on his comment?
Yeah, for sure. I think I would wrap the training into organizational change management. You're absolutely right. That's that if you go live with this aren't trained, it's not going to end well for anyone. In the first part of the question, I completely blanked on.
I think the first part had to do with getting all of your business processes and documentation in line. Remember when I talked about homework and all the stuff that any owner should be doing before they invite anybody, and to have a clear understanding of the data, the reporting, the integration. That to me kind of is all part of the same thing. Have a very clear and documented understanding of where we're going because it's going to be asked for.
All right, excellent. So if you all will look in the back corner of this room, to my right in the back corner, waving at you is Katie Marwitz and Brett Burmeister. And they're on the Kahua team. They'll be outside, as will I, as will these guys afterwards. We're going to give you back 1 minute of your time. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Steve and Arthur. Excellent job.
Thank you so much.